Good morning. This is Kenneth and Heather with the Advancing Equity Coalition, and Happy New Year. Happy 2021. How are you doing today, Heather?
Good. That was a long board meeting.
It was a long board meeting. It's been a long week. We don't want to skip over the fact that obviously this last week, for many, many reasons, has been really emotional, really hectic. So we just want to make sure we acknowledge that as we talk about the leadership and governance of our school district. We're also having a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about the leadership and governance of our country. But Heather, do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown around what happened at the school board meeting last night?
Yeah, so last night, the first thing that we heard was a welcome to our new school board members and our new student rep. I personally can say I'm going to really miss student rep Janine. I think he's brilliant. But I'm looking forward to getting to know our new student rep and hear all of her thoughts. Then we had a lot of public comments last night, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And then really we got into the meat of the presentation, which was Superintendent Graff and his staff talking about what a pretty imminent return to school is going to look like for our district. We heard the details and the timing of the plan. And then we heard the board question and answer about the plan and kind of get some clarifying. Then we heard we had an update on our legislative agenda because that's in full swing from Josh Downham. And then at the very end, we talked about some policies that we're continuing, the policy committee is continuing to work on. So it was I think, almost 3.75-hour meeting.
Yeah, it was definitely a long meeting. Definitely hard to do over um, like live stream. But getting used to it, it's weird, it's different, but still getting used to it and feeling like starting to build that stamina for these longer meetings. Um, so I wanted to just share what our slide of the night was because I think it's really important context for this raging conversation that we're having as a city and a community about returning to school. And so this is actually a slide that was not shown during the school board meeting last night. It is in the board book. It's actually the last slide. You can see it's 50 out of 50 on the board deck. But this is what we're looking at when we're talking about, why a return to school is so important, and giving the option for in-person learning. Like this is what we're weighing against the health and safety risks of students. And while returning to school mainly focuses on elementary, or is right now for elementary students, we can see the upticks in course failure amongst middle school and high school students. And we know that middle school and high school students can be a little bit more independent, and do more learning without their teacher directly. And we know elementary school students really need their teacher. And so um, this is what we're weighing. And not to say that it's more important that we focus on the academic gains and the risks that we're facing academically than it is what we're facing as a community in terms of like the health and safety of students and staff and teachers. But I think it is important that this is the other part of the conversation that we have not really been talking about too thoroughly at this point. And these are the losses, these are the consequences of the decisions that we're making, and we need to acknowledge that risk as well. Any thoughts on this, Heather?
Yeah, I think that Director Arneson made a comment and said, if for over the last 10 months, we have just looked at one hard decision with potential negative outcomes on each side on repeat. And I think that that is really important to kind of remind ourselves that, like, this is all happening within a system that already underserved students of color, and so, like, that we have to keep the big picture in focus while we're looking at these hard decisions.
Right. And this is just a snapshot, obviously, of one group, or I guess two groups of students, the middle school and high school students, and then disaggregated by race. But we know that there have been other groups of students that we've been talking about, for the last several months, especially special education students who we know are not getting the services they need over distance learning. And, the district has tried to do different things to ensure more support for special education students. But from everything we've heard anecdotally, I would say that special education students are just not getting any type of services to meet their needs, and parents, families are feeling really overwhelmed with the fact that their student needs support and they're just not able to access it right now, which is really frustrating.
Well, it was a long, contentious meeting, and there are incredible feelings on each side. But let's talk about our do better moment of the night. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So my do better moment was really a lot of teachers calling in last night, and I think it's perfectly valid for teachers to call in and talk about their concerns with return to school. I also think it's perfectly valid if that's what they're choosing to do, to call in and talk about their concerns with the CDD. What I don't think is okay is stoking people's anxiety and fear around going back to school and what does that mean for the transmission of COVID-19 in the middle of the pandemic, and using that to then conflate that with the concerns around students moving schools and teachers ultimately moving schools. And I just thought that was really, really inappropriate and really confusing. Honestly, it didn't make sense why a lot of teachers were saying, "Oh, we can't return to school and we can't do the CDD." That case wasn't really made clear to me. But what it really did feel like ultimately is that they were trying to utilize the fears and anxieties of people that people have of going back to school in person, and trying to then conflate and then amplify people's fears in opposition to the CDD, which are two completely different things. And the continual thing that we're hearing from folks that oppose the CDD is about trauma, but they're just trying to inflate the trauma and really exacerbate the trauma that people are going to experience because of what's going on in the pandemic. And so I just thought that was really inappropriate, especially since it was teachers in the district that were doing it. It felt like a concerted effort and a coordinated effort, which was really disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, the theme of delay the CDD has been an ongoing theme for a long time, and it feels like we've picked up and married a lot of things together that in order to get that messaging across. So my do better moment comes down to Director Jourdain. You know, I think that this is a really pivotal time for our school board. This is a hard time to be a school board member, and there are big decisions that need to happen. And I heard many school board members last night talking about the weight of choosing these things and really knowing that their decisions have are going to have negative consequences either way. They know that. And the fact that Director Jourdain continually says nothing. The most action I saw of him last night was when he picked up his cat and pet it for a little bit, and I just feel like I know being a school board member is challenging, and I know being in Minneapolis and being a school board member is especially challenging. But I really want to know that my school board members are there with passion, with intensity, and even if they disagree with each other, and even if I don't always just agree with their actions, I want to see a level of commitment to keeping my kids educated and safe. And I'm really frankly over his lack of action in what I consider a seat of high priority.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that for Director Jourdain, I appreciate the fact if he doesn't actually have anything to say, that he's not taking up space by grandstanding, and I think that is fine, and that's a great decision. I really, really appreciate that are not wasting our time by just pontificating. um, and also, I want to know what he cares about. I want to know what he's thinking. I want to know what are the things that we should, from his perspective, around what we should be paying attention to. He has a district full of schools that are opposed to the CDD. He represents. He's an indigenous man. He's a Native man, and we heard terrible data around how indigenous students are doing in the district right now. I want to know what he cares about. And so, I hope he's doing things behind the scenes. And again, I appreciate the fact that if he actually doesn't have much to say, then he's not taking up space. But to your point, it would be nice to hear from him more often, to know what he cares about, what's going through his mind. So let's end on a high note. What's your most valuable moment from last night's meeting?
I really appreciated Director Elamine's comments. When we were talking about returning back to school, the one thing that we learned was that you are automatically opted into returning to school so that they can make plans for families. And she really talked about the lack of trust and communication, especially to our district and especially toward families of color. And she said, I want to over communicate. I want to be on top of communication. I'd like to be in front of communication breakdowns. And I really felt like that represented both what, concerns from her community and so I just really appreciated her call to action to make sure that families really, really know what's going and that they feel powerful and making choices and that they feel like the district's telling them what their options are.
Yeah. I thought my most valuable moment for sure was actually Superintendent Graff's comments. I know we don't actually do a lot of praising of Superintendent Graff, but I thought that Superintendent Graff's comments were really strong last night. I thought it did a great job of centering the needs of students in this debate around returning to school. I thought it it gave agency, or it put the focus back on giving agency back to families and parents to make the best decision for their kids, and that Minneapolis is here to provide the best options possible, and also that we can mitigate risk and we can do hard things together. And so I thought that was really, really important. The way that he laid out the academic data, again, really created a duality in the perspectives around what we are weighing, and also put into perspective that Minneapolis has been one of the most, if not the most, cautious and conservative districts when deciding to come back to school for the state. And I'm not saying that this means that they should go back just because they have been cautious. But what I am saying is that there are other ways to talk about this that value, or that are worth having the debate, right? And worth having the conversation around. Look, we have students who are struggling. We have parents who want to go back. We have the capability, and we have the responsibility to provide parents and families and students with the best education possible that best fits their needs. And we know that distance learning has not done that. We have the data to show that, which we showed with our slide of the night. So I thought it was a really, really strong statement. I thought I thought he came out as a really strong leader during that moment, and I think he deserved our most valuable moment last night.
Yeah, we've been critical of him not leading and not telling his own story. So we need to name when he does something that we've been critical of, right?
So for sure.
All right.
Well,
That's our recap.
yeah, that's our quick recap. If you want to check out our longer video, there's tons of stuff for us to talk about. So please check it out. We have a lot to say about all of the dynamics and the hidden things that happened during the meeting last night. So please check it out, and share our video. All right, Heather, talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.